See here, I got it. There we go. Are these extravagant promises? We think not. They are being fulfilled among us, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. They will always materialize if we work for them. This thought brings us to step 10, which suggests we continue to take personal inventory and continue to set right any new mistakes as we go along. We vigorously commenced this way of living as we cleaned up the past. We have entered the world of the Spirit. Our next function is to grow in understanding and effectiveness. This is not an overnight matter. It should continue for our lifetime. Continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. When these crop up, we ask God at once to remove them. We discuss them with someone immediately and make amends quickly if we have harmed anyone. Then we resolutely turn our thoughts to someone we can help. Love and tolerance of others is our code. And we have ceased fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol, for by this time sanity will have returned. We will seldom be interested in liquor. If tempted, we recoil from it as from a hot flame. We react sanely and normally. We will find that this has happened automatically. We will see that our new attitude toward liquor has been given us without any thought or effort on our part. It just comes. That is the miracle of it. We're not fighting it, neither are we avoiding temptation. We feel as though we've been placed in a position of neutrality, safe and protected. We have not even sworn off. Instead, the problem has been removed. It does not exist for us. We are neither cocky nor are we afraid. That is our experience. That is how we react, so long as we keep in fit spiritual condition. It's easy to let up on the spiritual program of action and rest on our laurels. We're headed for trouble if we do, for alcohol is a subtle foe. We're not cured of alcoholism. What we really have is a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. Every day is a day. What do we got going on here? Every day is a day when we must carry the vision of God's will into all of our activities. How can I best serve thee? Thy will, not mine, be done. These are thoughts which must go with us constantly. We can exercise our willpower along this line all we wish. It is the proper use of the will. Much has already been said about receiving strength, inspiration, and direction from Him who has all knowledge and power. If we have carefully followed directions, we have begun to sense the flow of His Spirit into us. To some extent, we have become God-conscious. We have begun to develop this vital sixth sense. But we must go further, and that means more action. Big Book, page 84 and 85, step 10. Thank you very much, Al.
All right, Jack.
Hey everybody, I'm Jack Wheeler and I'm an alcoholic. I've been sober by the grace of God and the 36 spiritual principles of Alcoholics Anonymous since January 1st, 2004, and for that I am very grateful. Al, it's always a pleasure to come to this group. I love this group. And, there's a bunch of people on here that I love very much, and it's nice to see everybody. It's nice to when we come on these things and there's familiar faces and they know my story, so I'm not going to be able to do a lot of lying. I'll still squeeze some in there probably, but they know me, and it's nice. That's the nice thing about Alcoholics Anonymous is I'm not hiding from anything. And the topic today, steps 10 and 11, are dear to my heart, because they have changed me in areas I couldn't change myself. And I tried. The journey into Alcoholics Anonymous was me trying to be the guy I wanted to be, and I couldn't get it done. Time after time, I was let down. And, so I want to start with, and Scott, it's nice to see you, and Carol, and thank you for reading the 10th step. We close the meeting right now. Except that I get to share my experience with those directions that you read, and they are directions. There was a time I was early in sobriety, and somebody read this to me, and it changed everything for me. because I could see the results of something I couldn't see 1 minute before. And that's the cool thing that happens a lot around here. All of a sudden I can see something I couldn't see 10 minutes ago. And we all know the bedevilments and we know the promises. And the promises, the step 9 promises, which come right before step 10, I think are pretty imperative for me to have an active discipline in those daily practices, those daily things that we do around here. Because if the transformation didn't happen, I wouldn't do them. I wouldn't be up for it. And, you know, a guy laid it out for me, and I'm going to lay the bedevilments against the promises. And the bedevilment is we were having trouble with personal relationships. I know that's probably not your experience, but it was mine. The promise is we will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. Self-seeking will slip away. The bedevilment is we couldn't control our emotional natures. The promise is we will comprehend the word serenity and we will know peace. The bedevilment is we were a prey to misery and depression. The promise is our whole attitude and outlook on life will change. The bedevilment is we couldn't make a living. The promise is fear of people and economic insecurity will leave us. The bedevilment is we had a feeling of uselessness. The promise is that feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. The bedevilment is we were full of fear. The promise is we will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. The bedevilment is we were unhappy. The promise is we are going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. The bedevilment is we couldn't seem to be of real help to other people. The promise is no matter how far down the scale we have gone, we will see how my experience can benefit others. We will not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. And most of all, we will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time sharing my story because there's a lot to cover in what we're going to talk about. And that transformation that I just read about, there's 31 pages of directions between the bedevilments and those promises. And if we follow those directions, it's absolutely remarkable what happens to us. And it's not by us. It's not by Jack. It's of God. And when I do those things, when I stand up and take responsibility for my life, those things happen. And I've had the same experience with the disciplines. And I'll give you a quick story so you understand who I am. 5 years ago, maybe a little less than that, but it was during COVID. So I think it was about 5 years ago. My sponsor shared with me that he was doing a guided meditation. And that's how I take direction from my sponsor. He shares something that he's doing that has made a difference in his life, and I copy him. One of my greatest character defects that has become an asset is my stalking skills. I'm still an excellent stalker. And he told me, he shared with me something he was doing. He said he was doing a guided meditation and he was doing it off the Insight Timer. And I went on the Insight Timer and I downloaded the guided meditation and I did it. And I can tell you, I did it every day. 3 days after I downloaded it, I did it for the first time. And probably 2 days after that, I did it again. And it goes through a 26-minute or 24-minute thing, and then at the end of it, he says, "Now you have completed day 52," and it was a 52-day meditation. And I listened to it a couple of days later, and it said, "Now you have completed day 52." And it caught my attention because I should be on day 51, even though I missed a couple of days. So I'm thinking it's really keeping track of continuity, and I did it the next day, thinking I'd be at 51, and I did it the next day, and it ended, and it said, now you have completed day 52. And, or 52 days left is what it said. And I'm thinking to myself, it should be 51. You know, I want credit. And I listened to it the next day and it was still 52 days left. So I go on Insight Timer and I'm trying to find day 51 of the guided meditation. and I can't find it. And so I texted the help email on Insight Timer and said, "Where's day 52 through 1?" And they said, "We don't have that." That was the email I got back. It's just that one. And I found the phone number, which is hard to do, and I called Insight Timer. And I'm like, how can we do 52 days of meditation and always land on day 52? That doesn't make any sense. And they said to me, that's all there is. And I'm arguing with them. I'm arguing with the people at Insight Timer that that's not right. And that's who I am. I got this belief system in my head that will kill me. I'm arguing about meditation with the people at Insight Timer because I want day 51 and day 50 and day 49 and day 48. And I can tell you I have followed through with that guided meditation. It's just fine without my input. And that's pretty much the story of my life. And the step 10 says we've entered the world of the spirit. The journey in Alcoholics Anonymous for me has been one of this toxic self-centeredness, a journey from this toxic self-centeredness to God consciousness. I go from this guy that can't think about anything but what I need to a guy that is interested in what you need. And it says that we've entered the world of the spirit. Our next function is to grow in understanding and effectiveness. And I missed for a long time. It says continuously, continuously, continuously. Needs to continue for our lifetime. And I do it hit and miss. If you would have called on me about the 10th step early on and asked me what my experience was, I would tell you something about what I was doing at night and how I was saying I'm sorry. And the amends process is an important piece of the 10th step. But I think for me, it was the least followed direction in the big book. It was the hardest thing for me to continuously watch Jack. I suffer from that toxic self-consciousness. I suffer from that thing that has me looking at you instead of me. And that's how I treated it for years, was to point at you, point out there. If you would do something different, if you would do this, if they would do that, if this would change in my life. It's that journey, that conversation in my head that continuously tells me that there's something out there that's going to fix me. And what I found here is it's an internal condition. And we go through this process, and I get changed to where I can have an internal dialogue that's different than anything else, anything I've had in my life. And that internal dialogue that, it says the main problem centers in our mind. That's true today for me. And these disciplines, these practices, it says that I'm supposed to watch. I'm supposed to continue to watch Jack. I can remember at one point when I started doing this continuously, regularly, I called my sponsor one day and I said, Bob, the 10th step actually starts in the last step of the 4th step. I'm always the first column of the 10th step. And it was a huge epiphany for me that I'm supposed to watch me, not you. That last column in the 4th step, that last piece of inventory where it lands in my shoes, is where I need to focus my attention. It's where I need the connection with you and God more than anything. And he said, yeah, that could be true. Didn't say it was true. He said it could be true and hung up on me. So I called my buddy Charlie and I said, Charlie, here's the deal. I just realized that the first column of the 10th step is the last column of the 4th step. And he was busy driving somewhere with something going on with work. And he said, yeah, that could be true. Maybe. I need to think about that, and hung up the phone. And the cool thing is it changed the 10th step for me from this, what people will call a mini 4th step. I can tell you when I have a piece of spiritual business and I need to write about it, it is different than the 10th step. In the 10th step, I'm looking at Jack. I'm looking at Jack in a way that I've never looked at Jack before. I'm looking at Jack to my own shoes. Where am I resentful? Where am I dishonest? Where am I selfish? Where am I full of fear? What's driving me in the conversation of life? What's got me hooked today? I can remember talking to Bob, and I said to him, I said, telling him something, and he shared with me, this was years ago. Bob shared with me, he said, Jack, there's two things you can do. And I was like, what do you mean? He shared a story about him and Sandy, and how when something has him, Sandy had shared, when something has him hooked, he's come to the place where there's two things he can do. He can amend or he can forgive. And Bob said to me, he said, I've been looking at it for the last 2 years, and I think it's true. And once again, I took it as direction, and I started looking at it, and I thought it was profound because it came from Bob and Sandy. And then I'm doing my evening review, which is part of the 11th step. And it's actually a check of my 10th step. And I realized it says it right in our book. It says we ask for forgiveness. It's one of the last things it says with the evening review. And then it goes on to say that we ask for corrective measures, amend or forgive. And when it says ask for forgiveness, what I've found is forgiveness is not about Jack. Jack is given a forgiven heart. I become forgiving when I pray for forgiveness, when I extend forgiveness. And forgiveness isn't for them. I always thought I was giving somebody that didn't deserve something. What I know today is we're all God's kids. And could I possibly be driven to have that behavior in my own life? And when I can ask God for a forgiving heart, it works both directions. It's the only thing that works both directions. Because when I'm just forgiving you, when I'm just saying, okay, I forgive you, I'm coming from a place of spiritual arrogance. But when I ask God to filter it through the spiritual path, the thing that is just out of reach, it seems like sometimes, it changes everything. And I did learn how to watch Jack's behavior. And it was remarkable, the transformation in my life. Some of the behaviors that I had stopped. It just stopped happening. It wasn't an effort. I wasn't trying to be kind all the time. I wasn't trying, it's allowing that 7-step magic into my life for that thing to happen to me that I could never do on my own. And I learned to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear in my own shoes. And as I did that, things changed in my life. And it wasn't something I did at night. It's the walk around stuff. It's rolling up to a project that I have going on. And I'm going in to talk to one of my employees, and there's been something that's gone not quite right in Jack's belief system on that project in the last couple of days, and I've got to deal with it. How do I walk up and be respectful? How do I walk up and be kind? It took a long time for me to understand what Bob has taught me, which is that if life is the school, love is the lesson. And I'm not even available to it unless I'm practicing these disciplines, because I'm so wrapped up in self-centeredness. I'm so wrapped up in how it affects me. I'm so wrapped up in what it's going to do for my family, And what I know today is that it's all good, man. It's all good. And yet it is a discipline that requires my focused attention. It requires me to actually watch, to take a minute, to not get out of the truck so fast, to not pick up the phone so quickly. There's a spot in the book where it tells us to relax and take it easy. That doesn't sound like a direction to a guy that grew up on a ranch with a cowboy contractor as a father. I'm supposed to, pull myself up on the bootstraps and by my bootstraps and take action. But today I can tell you a lot of the time I sleep on things. Isn't that relax and take it easy? Gives me time for prayerful consideration. Prayerful consideration was not something that was in my vocabulary when I walked in, let alone my actions. And I can turn my attention today to somebody that I can help. And sometimes that's just the thought process. It's just the heart. It's moving from that intellect to heart. On page 143, it says the transformation that we're talking about in Alcoholics Anonymous is a change of heart. What changes my heart is these actions that we're taking, because I change my mind regularly. Still today, my wife's cell phone, when I call her, the ring is a train whistle, because she knows I'm getting on every train that comes through the station a lot of the time. And the reality is that's my mind. I have a plaque on my desk. It says Jack Wheeler, Jr. Partner. And I can tell you that when that was given to me by my sponsor, the first time I did a third step with him, it was about turning it over to God. That I'm a junior partner in this thing. Today, it's different because it's that, but it's also the fact that my mind is a junior partner. How do I go from that cerebral place, that place of intelligence, that place where my belief system will lead me down a road that's not the right road right now, to the spiritual path, which is in my heart. It's who I be, and life is happening out there. And this 10th step is a place for us to bring it back to the spiritual path every time, to keep my mind, my intellect, my belief system, the old idea, a junior partner. Because an old idea is something that's 30 seconds ago. And how am I open that set aside prayer? How am I open to a new experience? And I can tell you, if you suffer the spiritual malady like I do, I need a spiritual awakening right now. I need a spiritual experience right now, because yesterday's isn't going to be, yesterday's Crown Royal didn't do anything for me. And I need that current experience, and the 10th step keeps us in that place. If I'm watching, if I'm turning to God, if I'm turning to you, the directions in the 10th step, ask God to remove it at once. Talk to another man. Make amends quickly if amends are due. Not that night. Not the next day. Make amends promptly. My sponsor's wife, I was sharing something with him at one point, and from the other room, I could hear Karen say, Jack, you only get one chance at promptly. And it was like big news for me. I had never considered that. But I'm here to tell you only get one chance at promptly. And this practice, this discipline of walking around with this constant watching changes everything, because a lot of the time I'm prompt. A lot of the time I'm looking to be of service. A lot of the time I'm looking to be kind. Those things were not natural for me. And the longer I've done this, the more natural it's become. I'm not the guy that's going to sit up here and say, I still get the same character defects I had. I probably do, but they're showing up in different areas of my life. And some of them, they've completely fallen away. And they seem like brand new character defects. And that's the magic of this thing, is it meets us right where we are. In every day, it meets us right where we are. And I need something like that, because I got this thing, I got this thing where when I say that, you guys will shake your head because you got it too. And you know exactly what I'm talking about. And the process, the journey with step 10 has been one of hit and miss. It's been hit and miss. I can tell you I hit more than I miss now. But there's days where it gets on me. I'm rolling around with a crew of guys that keep me in line, and I'll be talking about what happened yesterday. And they'll ask me, did you make a phone call? Well, no, I didn't make a phone call. I managed it myself. Because I have that ego, I don't even know it when I'm managing it myself. I think I'm doing the right thing. I think I'm taking the spiritual action. And the reality is it changes completely when I share it with another man. It changes completely when I ask God to remove it at once. I'm not the guy when guys that I sponsor are starting on the 10 step, I start calling them with mine, and they start seeing that they should be doing that because it works. The reason I did it was because it worked. The reason that I continue to do it is because it continues to work. I was down in the Grand Canyon. I was invited to go on a rafting trip down the canyon. And I'm sitting in Nankoweap. It's like day 6 or 7 on the river. And I'm with people I love. It's a private trip. I'm cruising, and we're at Nankoweap, and it's one of the most spiritual places I've ever been. There's ancient ruins there. I'm with people I love, and I'm out on a boulder 5 o'clock in the morning waiting for the light show to see the sun come up and light up the wall of the canyon from the top to the bottom. And I'm praying and I'm meditating. I'm doing the things you guys taught me to do. And I'm smoking a cigar. And I finished the cigar and I put it out on the rock I'm sitting on and field strip it and put everything in my pocket. Everything's perfect. It's a magnificent spot. My heart is good. And I get up from the rock to walk back to camp after watching the light show. And there's a great big ash mark on the rock. And from where I put the cigar out, I didn't mean to do it. And I was like, oh my. And I go down to the river and I get some water and gravel. And I'm trying to clean a boulder in the bottom of the Grand Canyon at 6 a.m. And I couldn't get the ash mark to go away. Today, I guarantee you, if you went to that boulder in Nankoweap, you would see a big ash mark on the side of that boulder. I got it to fade. I got it to lighten up. But I guarantee that ash mark is still there. And I felt terrible about it. And it wasn't that day, but the next couple of days I was on a slow section on the river and just thinking, present. And the epiphany hit me that everywhere I go, I leave a mark. Everywhere I go, I leave a mark. And if we can develop this discipline, this practice of the 10 step to where we're watching ourselves, what's driving us, what's going on, how am I? It changes the mark we leave. And everywhere I go, I leave a better mark. That's the magic. That position of neutrality, that play, when I'm having a conversation with my kids, my wife, my employees, my friends, whatever. One of the greatest things in the world is watching 2 active members of Alcoholics Anonymous have a difficult conversation. It's cool to watch. We're trying to access the principles, man, but we have emotions. We have feelings. We have that humanness about us. We have those egos. And it's so cool to watch people try and do it. And that's who I am. But if I'm coming to that from that promised place of neutrality, it's a different conversation. And we get delivered to that place by learning this practice and implementing this practice, doing it. I was sitting at a restaurant with my son and my daughter, who are partners in my business and loves of my life. And my son's 34, my daughter's 38, and she's an active member of Al-Anon, been in Al-Anon for a long time. And we're sitting having a business meeting, a business lunch. And my son says to us that stress is just force applied to an immovable object. And my daughter goes, oh, shit. I said, what? She said, Jack, now he's going to use that with the guys he sponsors. I said, yeah, you're probably right. Because if I'm engaged and active in these disciplines, I'm not immovable. The stress is going to be there, but it's not going to break me. That's the magic of this thing. It says love and tolerance of others is our code. If we could follow that code, it'd be magic, and life just gets in the way. My ego gets in the way, my belief system, all of those things. And I'm sitting in my living room having a conversation with one of the guys I sponsor. And my son, who's an engineer, he's home from engineering school. And And he's in the kitchen doing something, and I'm on the phone with the guy's sponsor, and I'm telling the guy I'm talking to on the phone that tolerance is hard. It's hard. Sometimes it feels like I should get extra credit. It's like I got to muscle up to tolerate you. And I hung up the phone with the guy that I was sponsoring, and my son from the kitchen says, "Dad, that's not tolerance." I said, "What are you talking about?" He's home on break from engineering school. And I'm thinking to myself, who is he to question my spiritual juice? And he says, "Dad, tolerance is the space between two objects that allows them to operate freely without friction." And I said, "F you." And then we laughed. But I knew the minute he said it that it was a spiritual truth. I knew it. And the only thing that keeps me in that place where you get to be you and I get to be me, and we just get to operate, we just get to be here together, no friction, is this practice of continually watching what's driving me. Because I'm the guy that I can be driven by selfishness and spout spiritual principles at you. I can be driven by wanting to be something I'm not on the spiritual path and be dishonest about it. And be afraid you're going to find out. All those things, the thing that keeps me in check is this 10th step. The thing that keeps me close to God, the truth in my life is this practice. The 11th step, I can tell you my experience with the 11th step was for a long time. It was generally, there was more said than done. And it took a long time for that to flip for me. And I can tell you the great thing about these disciplines is there's boatloads of people for the last 90 years that have been doing it imperfectly with great success. With great success. And I don't know if I have a perfect practice. I know for me, I have a sobriety date. I'm effective. I have a relationship with a higher power. And when I say that, it brings me clarity. I can remember I did something ridiculous early on in recovery. I bought a truck when I had a truck that was 11 months old, and my sponsor asked me if I prayed about it, and I told him, yes, I did. And he said to me, well, did you get information from God? I said, yeah. He said, God said, buy the truck. And he said, was it in your voice? And I said, well, yeah. I mean, what other voice is in your head but your voice? He said, well, if God speaks to you in your voice, Jack, I want you to call me. And what I can tell you today is I hear people say that the 11th step is about listening to God. And I have to be real careful with that because I'm the guy. God always tells me, divorce her. God tells me to get a new job. God tells me to pull the pin on the hand grenade. But what I've learned is if I do this practice regularly and I'm struggling with something, I just wake up one day and I'm clear. I'm absolutely clear on what I should do. And that's a direct result of the 11th step. The 11th step starts with the evening review. The evening review is a check of my 10th step. And it's some pretty poignant questions. If you're like me, that question, was I kind and loving toward all today? Took me a long time to answer yes to. And there's days where I can't answer yes to it. But I get to look at what I did, and I can get to go back and clean it up or take different action. I get to change. I get to see my behavior. So it's a look at my 10th step, and then it points me to those two things. It has me ask for forgiveness, ask God for forgiveness, a forgiving heart. It works both ways. And it asks me to ask for corrective action. And I think those are the two, it's the only two places to go. If life is the school, love is the lesson. And if I'm hooked on something and I can't get past it, one more time, it's asking me to forgive or make amends, to do something, to take an action. And sometimes I have to get clear on those things, and that clarity comes with the practice. You know, I'm the guy that sat around in the morning thinking that I had to have a quiet mind to meditate. And my sponsor read to me the directions in the book, and it says upon awakening, we think about the 24 hours ahead. Gave me freedom to have stuff going on in my head. Gave me something to direct my mind to. Remember, the main problem centers in our mind. If you want your thought life to change, incorporate these disciplines into your life, because it changes your thought life in a way that I never could. You know, we talk about it in AA. We talk about the quietness of mind. You know, the silence. The silence isn't about what's coming from out there. It's about what's coming from in here. And if silence is the language of God, the only chance I have is to have these practices. And I've done these things. You know, I do wake up in the morning and I have a meditation practice and I do some reading. And I can tell you that it did not start easy for me. I can remember my sponsor saying to me, what's your morning practice look like? And I said, I'm busy in the morning, Don. I got to get to work. I live 60 miles from the job, whatever it was. And he said, Jack, you have dogs? I said, yeah. He knew I had dogs. I said, yeah, I have dogs. He said, well, do you put your dogs out in the morning? I said, yeah, I put my dogs out in the morning. He says, what happens if you don't put your dogs out in the morning? I said, well, they'll shit on the floor, Don. And he said, well, that's what you're doing to your day by not taking some time. He said, what I want you to do is I want you to get up in the morning. I want you to put the dogs out. And while the dogs are out, I want you to find a place to sit. And I want you to read something and be quiet for 2 minutes. Pretty easy direction. I can remember the first day I did it, I'm sitting there watching the clock. And I'm thinking, that's probably it. You know, I got my eyes closed. I'm trying to meditate. And I read something. And I'm thinking, this is it. And I look at my clock. It's been 30 seconds. You know, and then I look at my clock again. It's been 1 minute and 15 seconds. 2 minutes was forever. It was forever. But I can tell you I continued to do it because I was desperate and I know I need God. You know, the one thing that those steps have taught me is I don't need to talk about my beliefs or what my God is. I can just tell you that I believe I need God. It's a necessity. I'm all bought in on that. And I sat there and I did what he told me. And I can tell you that I don't know if it was 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks of doing it, but one day I sat there for 4 minutes. And I was stunned and I thought I was a master. And I continued to do it. And you know, I continued, and then I started taking an interest. I found interesting things to read, you know, things that struck me. And then somebody I knew in Alcoholics Anonymous would say, I read this and it really lit me up, and I would try reading that. Sometimes it worked, sometimes I didn't. It didn't, but I read something in the morning until it strikes me. And I say that because I was going down to Texas to hunt, and my sponsor said I could use his house down in Texas, and I went into his house, and he had, I don't know, if you knew Bob, you know he reads, you know, between 15 and 20 daily readers a day. And sitting on his coffee table, he had printed this book with like 8 daily readers on every day. And I'm sitting there getting ready to go hunting, and I'm reading all 8 of them. And I climb up in a tree stand, and my mind is just going nuts from what I read. And I read all 8 of them, and I'm sitting in a tree stand going stark raving mad, trying to figure out what I read. And I call my sponsor, and my sponsor said to me, he said, just read till something strikes you and then stop reading. I thought it was quantity, not quality. And today I generally read till something strikes me. And then I get quiet. Sometimes it's 20 minutes, sometimes it's 40, sometimes it's 5. But it's a genuine practice and a discipline. Even when I don't think I have time, I take the time. And my thought life has changed. You know, the main problem centers in our mind. You know, I went from the place that the guy that wanted to do AA right, to the guy that was just in Alcoholics Anonymous, from the guy that wanted to have a relationship with God to a guy that had a relationship with God, from a guy that wanted connection to a guy that had connection. And those things happen through these practices, through these disciplines. And I can tell you that it's we hear it all the time. We take actions we don't believe in, and we get results we can't deny. And that's been my experience, especially with meditation, especially with the evening review. I was a guy for years, I didn't do an evening review. For years I was a guy that would show up at an AA meeting and bring my own topic regardless of what the topic was. And these practices have taught me things like, when I go to an AA meeting, I share on topic, whatever the topic is. There may be something that I'm being guided to. Am I available to it? That's the question. When I go in and change the topic to my top 10, I'm not listening. I'm spouting. And in this practice, I got changed, and today I can go into a meeting and share on topic. I can be with my wife and listen to what she's telling me. I can be with my kids when they're hurting and going through hard stuff and just cry with them, not have to fix it. That's a change in who I am, because I am driven by that need that I think we all have. I know a lot of men do, to fix things. And I don't like being with things. And if you can't be with things, it's hard to be comfortable. If you can't be with things, it's hard to sit in discomfort. And I've learned both of those things through these practices. I can sit in discomfort today and still be peaceful and still have serenity and just know that it's my turn in the barrel and it's hard sometimes, or it's my kids' turn in the barrel and it's hard sometimes, or it's my parents' turn in the barrel and it's hard sometimes. And I get to just sit and be with them. I could never do that before. The practice in the 11th step of actually just being quiet, just sitting. I was talking to my wife earlier today, who's an active member of Al-Anon. I said, "What do you got on 10 and 11? She said, "Nothing." She was joking. But at the same time, I'm just open to it. We talk about the hollow bone. We talk about being an open vessel, being a channel. Am I completely blocked with my own belief system? My belief system will kill me. Still today, because I'll get in this place where I think I got to know it. I think I should know it. I think I do know it. And I'm not open to the experience. In Alcoholics Anonymous, the beauty here is it's about the experience. What experience are you having with this? If it's not great, I would say do it for 2 weeks. If it's still not great, try something else. That's the beauty here. We get to do whatever works, just spend the time with it. I'm the guy that will judge it, and I haven't spent the time with it. And the reality is my experience through doing it, through doing an evening review consistently, regularly, has changed my life. That we talk about, as we do that, as we spend time with, and we do an evening review, we do morning meditation practice, we start doing it throughout the day, and I needed a guy that was in the roofing industry. It's funny. You hear about this spiritual awakenings in Alcoholics Anonymous, and we didn't get them from a priest. We got them from a roofer. We got them from an architect. We got them from a butcher. We got them from a carpenter. It's amazing. A real estate guy. And I get a spiritual awakening because he's sharing an experience he had with me. And I was listening to a roofer, and he was sharing how he takes the 11th step out in his day. and how the meditation practice became something where he'd roll up to one of his jobs and he'd shut his truck off and he'd push the seat back for 2 minutes before he got out of the truck. I started doing it because it sounded like it worked for him. And that was years ago, and I still do it today. And it changed everything for me. It made the 11th step something that was accessible like the 10th step, where I'm watching all day long, I'm meditating, I'm taking time to connect with God all day long. It's that thing where I'll pull up to it. It happened to me on Thursday of last week. I had a tough business meeting coming up. I pulled up to the job. I kicked my seat back for 2 minutes and I asked God to take the meeting. And I walked up to the job after sitting for 2 minutes in quiet contemplation. And I opened the door and I asked God to go in first. Now, I'd like to tell you I thought of that, but I learned it from an HVAC contractor who's a great member of Alcoholics Anonymous down in Texas. And I had a tough meeting one day years ago, and he said, Jack, have God take the meeting. And I've been doing it ever since. It doesn't change the outcome of the meeting. I don't always get my way. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is I am better, regardless of the outcome. Regardless of what's going on, I show up better. I show up with kindness and service in my heart, and I want to be transparent and true. That's not how I did business before this. And it took a guy sharing his experience about his 11th step with me and his 10th step for me to try it in my life. And I came out of the meeting, and I got a guy that works for me in the program, and I came out of the meeting and I was sharing with him. I asked God to take the meeting. He said, me too. Because I share it with others, It's like I said, you walk into my office, I own the company, and it says junior partner on my desk. I've had to explain that to some clients. They always, don't you own the company? Yes, I do. And I get to explain to him what it means. It means that he's got it, And the reality is that I'm the guy that will forget that. The sign's there for me, not them. And this practice, this discipline that we do changes everything, because I know I've been convinced of the necessity of God in my life. And it's like my conception of God's always been the same. It's the guy sitting on a cloud with sandals on and a long sheet. But my experience with God has changed dramatically and regularly. My experience has deepened. And I don't have to explain to you what it is, but when I use the word God, you all know exactly what I'm talking about, so I just use the word God. And the cool thing about Alcoholics Anonymous is we all share our experience with it. None of us can exactly put our finger on it, and if we did, we'd probably alienate half the people in the room. So we talk about how we access it. And I started this with those 31 pages of directions that take us from the bedevilment to the promises. And if I follow these directions, if I do these things as outlined in this book, everything changes. My heart is different. I live from my heart instead of my head. The transformation in Alcoholics Anonymous is a change of heart. And that's a really good thing, because I change my mind all the time still today. I was going turkey hunting with a buddy of mine, and I showed up at his house at like 5:30 in the morning. He's 26 years sober. I was probably 8 years sober, 6 years sober at the time. And he was supposed to be ready to go. I was picking him up. It was 5:30 in the morning, whatever it was. And I pull up and he's sitting in his house. He's not dressed. He's not ready to go. And he's sitting there and no shoes on. And I said to him, Bobby, let's go, man. We're supposed to be up on the hill. We're supposed to be out. I'd like to be there before the sun up. And he said, Jack, you're just ready to go seize the day, aren't you? I said, yes, Bobby, I am ready to go seize the day. He said, Jack, what I want you to do is I want you to sit down here. We're going to have a cup of coffee. We're going to do a daily reading, one of those daily readers that always make us late to everything. And we're going to spend some time with this, and then we're going to go join the day. He said, it's God's day. And that's what the 11th step does for a guy like me. It allows me to join the day. The day's just fine without me. I get to go join the day, add to the day, not seize the day. I used to seize the day, and it's me driving the ship. And that guy taught me to join the day. And it's a hard thing. I grew up on a ranch. It's that I thought seizing the day was a compliment. And what seizing the day compliments with me is my ego. And the 11th step, that place of quiet humility, allows me to join the day today and be present to it. I didn't want to be present to it. I wanted it to go the way I wanted it to go. And I'll tell you, the greatest thing that's ever happened to me in Alcoholics Anonymous is I didn't get what I wanted, because I would have sold it short. I would have sold you and God short. And the reality is that as we go through this and we have these experiences, everything changes. And when I came in here, I wanted everything to change. And through the process that we go through, if you take the time, and don't forget it, I started with trying to get 2 minutes in a chair, quiet. The pause that we all talk about in Alcoholics Anonymous, I think, is the greatest gift and promise of the 11th step. It's not something I could summon. I did the other things. I did the evening review. I do the evening review. I did Upon Awakening. I do Upon Awakening. I brought meditation into my daily life. And when that happened, when I did those things consistently for a while, the pause was just there. It just happened. Because if I'm pausing on purpose, you're going to see the arrogance in my face. When I pause as a result of the work that I've done, and the connection to God, and the connection to you and Alcoholics Anonymous, it's a promise. It's just a result of doing the work. It happens. And in that space, I'm connected to God, and I'm connected to you. And the right thought, the right action just comes. But it's not something Jack's doing. It's a result of doing this other stuff. And the pause becomes accessible to a guy like me that was just demanding about my little plans and designs. And all of a sudden, I'm open to a bigger deal. And that bigger deal is the best thing ever, man. It's the good stuff. It's the real stuff. Al, thank you for having me.